So, wait, can you guys see my screen before I continue?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Good evening, guys. My name is Adewale Samuel Maiwa, and I'm a mobile developer. I also work with that's Flutter. So today I'm going to be introducing you guys or explaining how to improve application UI with some strategies and tips. It's really going to be very short and straight to point. The class is going to be very short and straight to point. So I'm planning you guys get learn from it. So I created this slides too. Let me just switch off the guide. I'm coming. I didn't need you. Okay. Oh, all right. So I created these slides to explain better. Okay, let's start from. Okay, let's make this full screen. Okay, let's start from the. So let's start from the topic: a guide for developers to improve application UI. We'll be talking about all the effective strategies and tips. So the first introduction is for the first few seconds of checking a project, the only thing the user notices is the user interface, and this is actually quite biased because if you create an app and you send it to somebody, person notice the first thing the person notes judges you with is the user interface. And also this is you can see this in companies look at your user interface, and the first thing that comes to their mind is that, can this guy develop this kind of application for me? Understand? So when it's very important that when we are trying to create a project, especially the junior devs among us, when we're trying to create a project, we consider the user interface majorly, because it's something that people don't really get to consider at the first glance. People don't really get to look at, hey, I'm using a stream, I'm using WebSocket, I'm using this, I'm using that. But the person gets to consider to know whether it's a professional application or not is the way the UI looks. And for a personal project, we don't have designs. Most of our personal project, we don't have designers to design it. So the application doesn't really look like very very good. So that's what I'm trying to say. We also need to know some UI tips so that we can improve those personal projects, and those projects that we do send to hiring manager and employers or something like that. So UI is just still on the introduction. Like I said earlier, UI is also very very important in job seeking. Companies need a way to ease you into the team itself. So I would explain better on this. Like a company I worked for some years back, we hired junior devs. So the first project we give them is to create UI and and create some UI. So if we see that the junior dev, like when we were recruiting, and the junior dev doesn't have this UI skill, we know that it's going to be a problem because we need to teach the person UI, we need to teach person state management and all those kind of stuff. And I'm not talking about companies that hire senior devs and with salary of an intern. I'm talking about companies that do hire junior dev. They actually don't want to be teaching you UI. UI is the last thing they want to like. They want you to have known how to create UI. So what you get to work on when you first join the company is most times is just UI. And that is the same thing for me in some companies. So most times the first thing they give you, the first task they give you is UI, and you get to see how the state management works in a company. They give you time to learn all those stuff, but the UI stuff is non-negotiable. So let me not just waste time in this presentation. We'll begin by exploring how a well-crafted UI can significantly impact user success of the application, and you'd learn to identify the key element that contributes to an outstanding user experience. So come on, just so so yeah, the content is it's going. I said as I said earlier, it's going to be very very quick and straight to the point. Is is how to distinguish between a good UI and a bad UI. Under that, we'll be looking at identifying a bad UI. We'll also be looking at common issues with user interface. Then we're moving into Flutter. Since we are Flutter devs, we'll look at theming, adaptive design, and responsiveness. I know it's not supposed to be used in the same sentence because they mean different things, but I will just explain that later. So we'll also look at feedback and animation. Then we move to conclusion and the Q and the QA session. So come on and QA session. So yeah, let me just move to the next one. So how to distinguish between a good UI and a bad UI? The first step is you knowing how to distinguish between a bad UI and a good UI. And some of you say I'm repeating myself, but it's really important. We and in one this thing we are kind of different. You give some people like a UI, automatically they know that this UI is not that good, but they really don't know why. Like why it's not that good, but they know that is not good. So what I'm saying in what causes this is due to past experience. They've seen how good UI looks like, and now they could compare that. Okay, this is not good. This is bad. This is, but they don't really know why it's bad. You understand? And how do you train yourself to like know if this is good or this is bad? So the first way I train myself is just going randomly on like Pinterest or Dreambo and searching for application design, just looking through. Yes, your brain do learn from like experience. So it's more of when you when you check a lot of UI, at some point you begin to know which UI is very, very good and which UI is very, very bad. You understand? So which UI is very, very bad or which UI is not that good. But now, come on, let me see what's the next slide. Come on, let me just move on. So now let's say you've trained yourself on how to, or some people are just naturally good at this skill, like knowing good UI with bad UI. But now the issue with just knowing good UI from bad UI and not knowing why is that I'll give you an instance. There was some time back, maybe like 4 years ago, I was working on native Android at that time, and at that time, I was working on a personal project and I don't really have a designer, you get. So it's more of let me take water. So it's it's more of me just figuring out some design on my head. And at that time I don't really know Flutter. This in Figma. So I couldn't create design. So what I just do is that I look at design and I try to like replicate and I try to like create designs from my head for my personal project. But what I found out that was that I know what is bad, I know what is good, but at the same time, I can't just like make the UI good for some reasons. You understand? And I'm referring to junior devs in this instance because and I'll keep saying this because most of the projects you create, you just try to like figure out something from your brain. And okay, this is how the layout is meant to look like, and this is how everything is meant to look like. But it ends up being bad, you understand? So when when figuring out those stuffs, you you need to like know some principles. I would say principle per se that okay, there's some principles you need to know to make sure that okay, if it follows this guide, then it's 100%, like 70% or 80% of the time it's a good it will look good to other people that are looking at it, not just myself. So the first one is hierarchy, which is which means if you see the UI on my left, you'd see this is an old this is an old website. This is a new website, and the difference is hierarchy, right? So now hierarchy just simply means like making showing showing user what they need to see, right, at first. So now let me just explain in simple terms. Like for example, you could see that this is bold and this is lighter than lighter bold. So there's a visual hierarchy. Like there is a this is going to be the topmost priority, this is going to be the second priority, and this is, you understand, this there's an hierarchy in this design, as opposed to this is bold, this is also bold. There's not really like an hierarchy in the design. This is also bold. So in modern design you'd see that everything follows an hierarchy, and I'll still be pointing it out in application, because I know most of people here uh application like develop apps. So in modern design you would see that there is a visual hierarchy, right? So you just want to like watch out for hierarchy, right? So what I normally do is that anytime I have a title and I have a description, I make the title more visible than the description. So if something that is done here, the title is this and there's a description, make it more visible. So something that also like some people that experienced developer also forget to do is that now they check the design, they see like this is bold, and they see that this is like lighter, a light color, and probably they forget to like set the color to be lighter. So this looks like this. So it also gives hierarchy, but not the way the designer wants it. So you also need to like when you're checking the design, you need to consider, okay, where's the hierarchy in this design and where is the hierarchy. So now moving on to application. So this UI, they are both good. They are both good, but but based on hierarchy and based on the hierarchy principle, this should attract the user attention at first. Like, so when you go into the application there should be a starting point, like this attracts my attention, just like this part. This should attract the user attention first, then it goes ahead to read this. And so this is usually like a title and what you want the user to do. So if you create your application like this, it's not that it's going to look bad at the when you don't follow hierarchy, but if you don't follow hierarchy and you don't follow some other principle, then you would know that this is looking bad. For this design, it's only hierarchy that it's not following. But there are some people that don't follow a lot of principles. So that's just it. So you see, this is better than this in some way. And let me just go to the next one. So the next one is alignment. So people don't really like when you look at it. I'm not even talking about juniors now. I'm talking about developers in general. So designer take, like I design apps too. So we take alignment very seriously. Like everything needs to align. Everything. So when you're creating an application, you should constantly watch out for alignment, like in the application. So there's center alignment, there's all those kind of alignment. So you should constantly watch for it. So if you slightly move in your application, if you slightly move this to this part, then it's not aligned, right? And for like I said earlier, it might not look bad, but you're not following this principle and not following other principle might make it look bad. So, and also alignment is not enough, it's spacing. This has a lot, this has space, but this is even better because of the spacing between this spacing shows, spacing helps to like show the spacing helps to like show the content better. So yeah, apart from hierarchy alignment coming. So let's move on to the next. Is the next one I would like to point out is consistency. Consistency. Yeah, designers are lazy. They reuse everything and are very consistent. So in your application, that's why we have like reusable widgets. We have a lot of things. So you need to look out for some things that are consistent. Like for example, border radius should be some people like me, if I'm developing an application, it's not like the border radius is even, but it's consistent. It's not like when I use 7 for every border radius. It's more like I use 7 for maybe bigger border radius and I scale the border radius down, maybe bigger. Like this card, I use like probably 30 for this. And then when it's a small card, it's proportional to this. So it's more consistent. So using a different border radius would not make the app consistent like the design, So you also need to like watch out for that, like watch out for what is consistent in the design that I'm being given. And yeah, the design I'm being given, what is consistent, what's consistent font style and everything. And accessibility, buttons should follow a predefined guide, and buttons should follow a predefined guide. We'll soon go to some tips in Flutter and how to like make an accessibility in Flutter also. But for the design part of it, the accessibility is, you shouldn't make the widget too small so they can't be clicked. So yeah, the next one. So yeah, so I would like to talk about the common mistakes I noticed. So in the design, in some when I'm looking at designs from people, there's some common mistake I'll notice is that they don't consider the design size. For example, now you're setting a padding of like 18 in your application, and your screen size is your screen size is like different from the design size. You obviously, the padding is not going to be the same as the one the designer used. You understand? So I'm not saying you should be picking up random values from your head, but you need to like know that everything that I set in my application should not be closely like, you need to know that everything I set in my application, every number I set, like the height and the width, it's supposed to look like it, but it shouldn't be exact number, right? So I can use a different number, and I don't need to like consider the number in design, as long as it looks good in the eyes and it looks like a design. And also that what will make you to like know if you should use higher or lower number is probably the design size. So the next one is two dark shadows. I would have I would have loved to show like a UI of bad and this thing, but how I like I just prepared the slide. So I was planning on showing some of all this default stuff, but I'll just explain. So there's some applications. I don't know if I could just go back to this and try to explain with something I've created. So let me just group this together. Come, group selection, and uh, I don't know why it's there. So now let me explain this. I don't know, wanting to disturb everything. So let me explain this. So I just want to show you how shadows do affect UI. Shadows is like one of the one of the worst thing that affects UI. So now I've set a minimal shadow, and this is the same widget. But now I just want to like just replace this shadow and just make it a little bit darker. Now this instantly you could see that there's a difference. So there's a difference between you don't someone don't need to tell you, except you are a designer that know what you are doing and you know the reason why you're using the dark shadow. Some people use dark shadow and it still looks good. But except you are a designer and know, okay, this is the reason why I'm using a dark shadow. It's recommended you make the shadow very light, very, very light. And and yeah, you should make it, you shouldn't make it the shadow too dark. Instantly you could see the difference between this and this. If I should hide this, then you see that this no longer looks good. Like this UI no longer looks good, right? This whole UI, it stops it. So shadow is one of the things that okay disrupt the UI. So and people and listen, and developers don't most developers don't really consider the shadow. I would say I'll say if the shadow, that's why I said you need to like use know how to know good UI from bad UI. You can just keep decreasing the darkness or opacity of this shadow so it looks very very light. So everything needs to be subtle in your application. So going to the next one, using large and dark icons makes the icons too noticeable. So on this topic, I would say icons are one of the things that beautify the apps, and it falls under the category of things that are not like, you don't really, it's in the application, but it doesn't need to like draw attention to itself, right? It just needs to provide like, make the UI look good without the user knowing what why the UI is looking good. So it just adds to the overall or beautifies the UI. So once you once you make your icons very dark, or use black, some people use black, total black. That I don't think I would use total black for my icons. Once you make the icons too dark, it becomes noticeable, very, very noticeable, more than even the text itself. And that way, it doesn't look subtle like an icon should look. So just try to make your icon look subtle in the application. And if you're making, and also icons should be proportional to, if you're placing it beside the text, it should be proportional and not be bigger than the text that you're placing it beside. So that's that on using dark and large icons. And the next one is incorrect use of colors. So this I would have wanted to make this a topic on its own, but due to time, it took a lot of time to go into all this color theory and everything. But what I just want you to understand is that colors actually play a role in how you view the application, and colors play a role in how you view the application. For people that do get their design from designers, they have the pre-built colors, and they don't need to worry about colors. You understand? But when working on personal project, and I keep on stressing personal project, because personal project is project is very important, especially for junior devs. Okay, this is what I show people that this is what I show people. Come in, let me just take water. It's okay. So sorry for that. So this is what I show people that show like recruiters, hiring manager. This is what I end up showing them, that okay, this is my project. And for this, you need to like consider a lot of things, including the colors. And one tip that I would give like junior devs or somebody working on this project is that don't try to like think of the color from your mind, because it's very hard to like get like two perfect colors, especially when you don't want to use like a white background. You want to use a different background. That will be very, very, very hard. So what I just need to use to do is go to some sites like Dribble and just search for application inspiration, maybe what you're trying to create, and then you'd see an application. Just try to like select the colors, like the colors they use in the application, and just the application you like. Just try to select the colors they use in the application, and also just try to like and use the same colors. Basically, you don't need to like stress yourself and look for colors, and because of most of 100% of the time is it's more of it's very stressful, because it's very stressful. The color don't end up looking good and all this kind of stuff, because you might not even know the why you're using some color. So that being said, let me move on to the next one. So tips and strategies for Flutter. And yeah, before I even go into tips and strategy for Flutter, I would also say, if you are working on I'm still talking about project, and there's a reason why I'm stressing projects, because everybody don't just start with experience. Like you start from somewhere. You don't start with just 10 years of experience. You start from basics, and most times the way people that start from basics see jobs you sh- is through referrals, right? And referrals is subjective. Like the person that wants to hire you is very like it's just subjective. Can this guy make the is this how my application would look like if I hire this guy? You understand? So that's the kind of question that people like that do ask themselves. So you just want to like try to make it look professional enough, and trying to make it look professional enough is you is you not creating the UI yourself. They are this thing, they are Figma pre-built UI that you can use. You understand? So you don't need to like stress yourself and try to figure out this is the UI for my project. If you have a project that someone has created before, you can reuse the Figma UI that the person uses. You understand? And yeah, and that's just I hope I'm making sense. So before I move into tips and strategies for in Flutter, just to pause a little bit, do anyone have like a question or like a question based on what I've said? That's just the design part of the 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 presentation. Do anyone have a question or everything is all good? So okay, so yeah, since nobody pointed out, so I would what did you
Oh, I was gonna ask generally, like, do we have any questions, guys? If you have any question, please raise your hand or drop it in the chat. If you
right?
don't have now, if you have later, please just drop
Yeah,
it in the
just
chat.
drop it. Just drop
Yeah.
it. So I don't want to just be talking to myself. So yeah, um, tips and strategies in Flutter, and this is a quick one. So for all the tips and strategies I mentioned in Flutter, I wouldn't be going into details, right? I'll just be explaining a little about it. So the first one is teaming. Teaming. You want to, if possible, you want to make sure you use Team to modify everything. And I wish I had like an example project I could show, but yeah, I didn't plan for that. So, but use Teams to make modifications, and there's some elements that you could change, and through teaming. The first one is text. The others text field, cards, dividers, and test field is very very important. Test field, make sure you change it with team. Very very important. You don't want to create a you wouldn't want to create a different text field widget to just do a modification that you can easily do in teaming. And teaming with teaming, when I'm talking about teaming, I'm talking about like using general team, like the fourth one that Flutter provides, general team. And yeah, so the next point is do not replace the default text widget. Instead, use text team or team extension. So by saying that, I said some people would create a text like app text and just remove the styles and just make everything plain. I do that before. Like at some point I do that before. So it's more of app text. So I can provide the font size, I can provide, and I don't even need to specify this. It's just like a reusable widget for text. But I think, based on my knowledge, I think if you want to use that, you need to know that some things exist like dark mode, light mode, and that will be very, very complex to be changing everything at once. So what you could just do is take advantage of the teams or team extension. So take advantage of the team and team extension. So by the end of this class, I might just show you my example project, probably how I do it like in my application. So we use colors by creating class that would colors. This is what everybody does. I don't know anyone that doesn't do it. Like some people use const, which is also fine for holding colors, Some people use like a color class, like app colors dot something. And also you do the same for assets. You want to avoid I think I fault in this part sometimes, but yeah, this is what it is. You want to avoid using just like just writing out the name of the asset, especially if it's used twice in the application. So you want to reuse a lot of things as much as possible. Just try to reuse a lot of things as much as possible. So under teaming, I think this is if you would just go into this like this code lab. I don't know if I can drop the link after this thing. So you would see a way to like set some themes in the application: color scheme, the card shape, the tab bar, the bottom up bar, the bottom navigation, everything. You see how you could use them in this code lab. So most times you just need to like just copy it and just change it to what you want sometimes. And yeah, and there's also flex color scheme if you want to like set it, but I don't think I use it. I don't think I've tried it before, but from what I hear, it's actually good for setting your team in your application. So the next one is adaptive design. So adaptive design. I said adaptive design and responsiveness, but I would just like to put it in a different topic on its own. So adaptive design is how you keeping in mind that your application works on different platforms. And some people like me, like my company, we also support web, and we also support Android, iOS also. So some people support most of these platforms. So you need to you need to reuse what the platform provides, and like font size, the orientation and everything. So you need to like use what the platform provides, and and make your application, generally just make your application to look like what it is on the platform. And if you don't want it to look like that, then you should have like a good reason why. Because material design kind of provides like a guideline that helps developers and designers to more like make the app look good on Android. And also iOS also has like personal design, so you need to like take advantage of all those design widgets for making your app look good. So next one is responsiveness, and I'll be rushing through all this, which is responsiveness is very simple. It's very simple, but it's hard in some cases. Like we work on web application, and the the issue is that web application is different from mobile. So for responsiveness, you want to consider that how do you create do you how do you reuse widget across web and mobile? Do you create the same application for web and transfer it to mobile? No, you actually can create a different project. That's what we're doing now in this thing. I don't want to reveal too much, but you can create a different project for your web. If you have a web application and you also have mobile, instead of trying to like adjust widgets across this thing, create different designs, create different projects for them, and then transfer your reusable widget or styles into like a shared package, and then you could use them. So in also talking about responsiveness, you should consider widgets like row, column instead of row, column, and a lot of them they're available. I can't just like recollect the one everything, but they're available, and you should consider things like alignment, because as in alignment when necessary. You shouldn't be using like the fixed value. You shouldn't be, let's for example, you shouldn't be using like a fixed value. You should look at how things are aligned in the application and probably use the alignment. So so if you're creating a responsive design and you say that, okay, this design, no matter how I want it to work, it doesn't like how I want it to work on a larger screen, it doesn't work, then ask your designer. If you're working with a company, ask your designer to provide you. Like you need to really stress these guys. Like just ask them that, okay, provide me with how this, okay, even though you can't create the UI, just tell me how this is going to look, because you don't need to be like stressing yourself to figure out how this will look, and at the end of the day it gets QA'd and they are giving you a feedback that this doesn't look good or something like that. So you need to just stress them, just stress the hell out of them. That's just it. And the next one is feedback and animation. So feedback animation, when user clicks on the button, it should respond accordingly. Don't use container with gesture detector to function as button. The main reason why I'm saying this is because of I've seen a lot of code that does this, and I also do this before. Like I was saying, okay, why I can style my container to look exactly like a button. Why should I use a button? But I looked into the code for buttons, like the way buttons are being created, and there's some exciting things that if you're styling your container yourself, then that you will need to be handling. You will need to be handling yourself. So, uh, so you should style, because button also provides like feedback. There's a way you could set button to give you like a change to a red button while probably on over, and that's for like web, and just make the button look good. So try to like make the button try to use button instead of container wrap with a gesture detector. And the next point is, if you feel that okay, what I'm creating is not the button and it needs to be click, sometimes it's best to use inkwell, just to give the user a little bit of feedback that hey, click on this. Sometimes it's good to use inkwell, and inkwell also provides like an over if you're on web, which is very very important, because the user needs to see hey, this is clickable, and inkwell would change the mouse cursor to a clickable mouse cursor on web. So just this thing. And apart from that, you need to ask your designer how things will look when it's loading and when it's empty. Designer just creates UI. They forget this important part, which actually makes the UI look more professional and this thing. And yeah, so I often do ask them like when there's a UI, I often do ask them. The first thing I ask them is, hey, when the data is not yet gotten, because designer assume that the data is gotten every time, but it doesn't work that way in Flutter. Um, we need to call an API. We need to do a lot of unnecessary things before we can do a lot of necessary things before we can display the the UI. So there needs to be like a loading indicator that hey, this is loading. So just ask your designer which loading indicator would be best, because sometimes the default loading indicator is not really good. And also on empty state, you need to ask them to provide you with how the UI looks when there is no data. Maybe when the user first logs in. So some people try to like okay, just be creative and add, let's say, text that this is okay. The user doesn't have like any to do, and just add the text. But just ask them how it's meant to look like in when it's empty, and also error state. So once again, you need to like stress them a lot, because your application needs to look fine. So yeah, use schemas when necessary. So what I also say, if you look at a lot of standard application, they make use of schemas. One I would point out is you look at YouTube, the Instagram look schema, maybe yeah, LinkedIn also use schemas. And what is common is that schemas is just a way. If you use loading indicator and the app takes too long, it's kind of doesn't give a good user experience basically. So you should use schemas and know when to use them. And I just see some people creating like a full screen schema, like just full screen to fill the whole with no. You should create schemas that look like there's a content there, and that will be done by the designer most times. So just try to preview how most of this application look with schemas like YouTube. Just try to preview, and you could get ideas of how you could make yours look better with schemas. So yeah, animation. We'll be going on to animation, and this might be the last part of this class. So animation are divided into two. A lot of people know this: implicit and explicit. Are divided into two: implicit and explicit. Implicit are very very like uh widgets that helps you animate from one value to the other. So basically, if I have a value and I'm changing from one value to the other and I call set state, then the implicit animation, I don't even really need to specify that. I don't need to specify that this is like this should change. It automatically changes, right? So there are a lot of implicit animation: animated content, animated padding, animated position, and implicit animation is very very good in Flutter. I use it most of the times. Like I just use it most of the times. So the next one is explicit animation. So based on what I wrote here, explicit animation doesn't animate except you say, okay, animate to this point. So it doesn't animate automatically. So the way you do it is you create a controller, and then you can use explicit animation. And when you call controller, when you start the controller, then the explicit animation starts. So the explicit animation snap, like what I said, they use this only when implicit cannot be used, because you really don't want to like be stressing yourself for something that can easily be done with implicit, because implicit is very powerful in Flutter. Implicit behind the scene uses explicit, but I don't want to get into that. But you just don't want to stress yourself to for a simple like color change. You don't want to stress yourself to start creating a controller, doing this thing, lep and everything. You want to like use implicit animation for that. So I'm coming. An explicit animation, I would just like to add to this. You can I think I wrote an article on animation, and yeah, an article on animation, and it's kind of got like a lot of, it's like a good number of reads. So I wrote an article on animation that explains, and there's also a very good animation article that Roa wrote. So that's very very good. So if you check it out, you know how to use animation. But just the basic thing, you could do anything with animation. You could do a lot of things with animation, and try to learn how to do things in sequence with animation. Like let's say for example, I open this page, this scrolls, this fades in, this, and everything's happening in sequence, right? Just try to like learn how to do that in sequence and know when to do that. Well, but when but animation are very complex, so don't use it when it's not necessary. So yeah, this should so the last one, which okay, this is the last. Yeah, this is the final one. So this is the end of feedback and animation. So before I like go into conclusion and then this thing, so I would just like to say when, like just like to just drop some tips. So when you for UI, when you are creating like a project, the best thing to do in your, because you want to show people that this is what it looks like. Best thing you could do in your readme is just like putting the the way the app looks on the readme. Some people like me, for example, sometimes I know I fault in this, but I do it most of the time. So this is what would be checked first, then followed by how your code is written and everything. So you just want to like try to make your app look good in the readme. And yeah, so yeah, that's just that on the tips. Like I said earlier, it's just tips. It's not really in depth. right? Just providing tips on how things should look like and how everything should feel in the application. So just try to like make your app look good in essence, and you get judged based on the way your app looks. And it's kind of biased, but that's the way everything works, right? In the country and in everywhere. So you get judged based on how your app looks. Like now, some people might have judged me based on how the slides looks, and yeah, they wouldn't want to hear that. Okay, I'm rushing through the presentation and everything, but yeah, you get judged based on the user interface and everything. So, I I don't know if I have been able to take this properly, but yeah. So this is just that. So I think that's the end of this class. So that was my okay. So any question, and is there any question? I think I'll pass on. Okay, all right. So I think there's no question for hello. Okay, I see Jonathan and up. Jonathan is up.
So I have a question. Yeah.
All
Hello.
right. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. My name is Jonathan. Okay, I've seen. And thank you very much for your time. And actually, I actually learned a lot because UI UX was when I started Flutter. I just started this year. Was one thing I always considered. And someone I have discussed with senior developers. Most times they're always assuring me that I don't need to worry. I'll meet with a designer that gives me issues and that'll give me the files and everything. I don't need to bother about it. But with this lecture, I'm convinced that it's actually the vital points that I need to work on. So my question is now, like someone like me now, like I'm just like learning the basics of plots and everything. Do you imply that I might need to like take a course on UI? Because based on what I've learned from what we discussed with us, we like most of your UI
Knowledge.
knowledge and your skills are gotten from experience. But from someone like me that I don't even have any form of normal experience in Flutter, I'm just trying to gain it through personal project because even this UI was actually a very difficult thing. I'm almost concluding a personal project now. And with what you just said, I feel I already have a bad UI with everything you just described today. So I might need to go back and go and work on it. But do I, someone like me now, do I take a course on UI? Because going on Dribble, going to Figma, I'm always confused. I don't think I can ever replicate it. I've tried replicating some, but I don't think they're usually close to it. Do you advise I take a UI course and try and add it to my journey? What do you advise? What do you say?
I
Thank you very
think
much.
not. I think no. No, you don't need to like take a UI course.
Okay.
Basically, like you don't need to take a UI course. But what I would just say is you should look out for some of the things I mentioned in your UI. So what I just said,
Yes.
and I also gave tips for developers. Developers don't need to like come on. I think the generator just gone. So developers, just give me a sec. Let me look.
Okay.
Okay, so like I said, or we are devs, and we just need to like be conscious that okay, we need to create our UI very good. But we for now, I would say you focus on Flutter. I'm making you very good in Flutter, but you just need to you just need to consider most of the UI tips. That's why for developers we just need like tips to just guide us. Okay, since we're not designing, but we just need to know, okay, this is meant to be aligned, this is meant to have an hierarchy and everything. So we just need to know that, and that's the first thing. But the problem that you said that you you can't just replicate, that's not a UI problem. That's actually like you practicing. When you practice a lot, then you would see that okay, you are getting consistent. Is you being like just practice how to create. Just what I would just say, instead of trying to like pick an application and developing the application from scratch to finish just to get better at UI, just pick like maybe a certain card today and just develop it. You understand? Like a card, the way the card look, try to make the card look exactly. And then maybe the next day try to like just pick something else. And what I'm saying in essence is that it doesn't really need to be complex, and like just something you could create and make your UI look standard. You understand? That's just it.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, no. All right. So next person, look. Come on.
Hello, good evening.
Okay.
Yeah, good evening. My name
Yeah.
is Kim.
All right.
So I just want to probably give a tip about what the question you just asked now. That probably if he's trying to replicate a UI, he's not getting it better. I think if you are using Figma, I think Figma used to like provide the details about a component you are trying to replicate. Let's assume you want to replicate a card now, and that card has border radius. So with Figma, you can get the radius of that card, the color, the shadow, and everything. You can get the value of all those things in Figma.
Yeah, yeah, and also that's yeah, sure, sure. I didn't consider that. All right. So the uh, next person is Afolabi. Like, just speak. You don't need to raise your hand.
All right. So, good evening, everyone. I want to appreciate some more. Like, it was a great presentation, really,
Yeah,
because I was able to see things better in a way. Like, let me put it that way, because some things I don't also take note of, I was able to realize that from the presentation. It's a great one, indeed. And also, I don't know, my question might not fully be on the topic we have today. So the program is organized by Flutter Bytes. So I want to ask a question ahead of Flutter Bytes conference this November. If because there was an opportunity in the flyer, I saw something around presenting the game that you build with Flutter. So I don't want to know the process in which we can go through with that. And I also want to ask you if you've worked on building a game with Flutter before, and what are the possible, if there is any tool that can be used with. Because okay, I'm building a game which I've been working on for a while. I've done some features, tic tac toe, X and O, all this X and O, some few manipulations, but I want to add some other things to it, something like a shooting game kind of style, which has been difficult to achieve. So I don't know if you have any tips in regarding that, and also if you have any information about the presentation during the Flutter Byte. Thank you.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. For the Flutter byte part, I think if Miriam is around, she'll be able to answer that. But before then, let me just answer like the game part. So, you said you want to like go into like shooting games with Flutter and all those kind of stuff. So, it's game development is a topic on its own. First of all, that's what you need to understand. But Flutter provides this Flame engine to develop game. That's Flame. So the main reason why Flame is important is because in games you need to like detect if two objects are touching each other. You understand? So you need to detect collision detection, movement, and everything. So Flame makes it easy for like if you are creating like a person shooting, a person shooting. So you need to like move the person. Flame makes it easier in that aspect. Flame makes it easier. So you can use Flame package, and there are also basic some basic stuff you need to know in game development, like coordinates and everything. So it's not quite hard if you want to create a simple game, but if you start thinking of something complex like very complex, then you game development is like a topic on its own. You understand? It's like a full project. You get. So that's just the basic. I don't know, Miriam. Miriam, are you here? Okay, I think she's not here. But for the Flutter by own, maybe I'll just send her a message after this, and then I can update you on it. So yeah, that's just it.
All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks for that, the tips too.
Hope I've been able to like answer the question.
Yes, 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 yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. No, let me just let me read. Okay, so okay, I I would have loved to do a quick demo, but I think the time is fast spent. So, but the next one is I said something about gesture detector on container as a button. Can I explain the flaw? The flaw is that the button itself provides like, especially on the web and on mobile, it could provide like material states for your for your button. So there's a state for click, there's a state for disable, there's a state for all those stuff. But for a normal person, he wouldn't consider all those material states. So he tries to like create a button with a gesture detector and only considers just clicking, which doesn't provide the user the feedback that the user needs. You understand? So button has a lot of things that it provides, and then if you can take advantage of it, you could just use it for your stuff, and it's very customizable again. So that's just it. Yep. So I think that's all. Okay, I think that's all. So we should think of ending the class now. So any more question? Okay. Right. So guys, thank you for joining the class. Um, thank you for joining the class, and thanks for all the questions. So I would see you later.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us all this knowledge. It was really amazing. I'm the person that has information about Flutterbyte stuff. We have not really settled on whether we're going to be doing a competition about game yet, but there's going to be an hackathon for the Flutterbyte conference, and more updates going to be coming on the Flutterbyte conference page. So you just have to watch out. And if you're also
Your
on the
voice broke along
community,
the line. I didn't get what you said.
oh sorry, Okay, so I was saying that we have not really concluded if we are going to do a game for the competition or the hackathon that is going to happen for Flutter by conference. So you just need to hold on to check out for updates, just watch out on the Flutter by conference page for more updates. And also, if you're on the community group, you're going to get updates surely on that page. Yeah. So thanks for joining, guys. I recorded the meeting today. I was able to record it. So I'm going to be hosting it on YouTube. And I'll share it with two other classes, unit testing and Riverport State Management, if you were not part of the class that time, so that you can watch. All right. Have a nice night, guys. Bye. Thank you, Mayowa. Thanks for tonight.
Okay, all right.
Bye.